branching out from an idealized all-American Main Street of the 1890s, neatly encapsulates the enduring significance of America's Revolutionary War in American society, culture, and politics. A fantastical imagined historical geography reflects a very real political culture. Now, it's not my intention to trivialize our subject this evening, and I'm trying to illustrate what I believe is an important point. Making sense of the American Revolution requires us not just to address the events of the late 18th century, but also to engage with past and present American understanding of their revolutionary origins and national development, because this will help us to understand how and why Americans and American historians have reacted in particular ways to subsequent revolutions in Latin America and the Caribbean. The United States today is over 10 times larger than the nation that declared independence in 1776. I think that's important in trying to understand the enduring significance of the revolution in American society and culture. The frame of government created by the American revolutionaries did rather more than simply create a new geographically fixed nation, the first republic in the Americas. It created a new kind of republic, one that could accommodate enormous geographical expansion, bringing in new territories and states on an equal footing as the original 13. Thus, American exceptionalism has come to mean, at least in part, what Americans regarded as the manifest destiny of their nation to grow into a new and uniquely powerful and significant republic, rather than existing as simply the first New World Republic among equals. For the last half century or so, most historians have agreed that on the eve of the American Revolution, there was relatively little social stress in the 13 colonies, elite rule was all but uncontested, and British North America was economically successful. Consequently, they have concluded that it was ideology, a deep and genuine belief in the ideals articulated by the patriot leaders, which inspired the revolution against aggressive imperialist policies by Britain and the creation of the United States. A few historians have argued that despite this ideology, the economic changes of the colonial era and the objectives of the landed and mercantile elites provided the groundwork for what was a fundamentally conservative revolution, one that involved very little change in class organization and elite rule, and which allowed the new nation to expand with a so-called empire of liberty, replacing the earlier British empire. Yet both of these interpretations, somewhat contradictory though they are, support an exceptionalist view of the origins and the subsequent history of the United States. I suspect that in our discussion we may well conclude that revolutions throughout the Americas have in fact shared common causes, not least in that they were often triggered by reactions to events and actions in Europe rather than in European mother countries. Not many historians of the United States and its revolution think in these terms, however, and over the past 2 1/4 centuries, American historians have constructed an ever more exceptionalist understanding of the American founding era. Thus, for example, even when the Venezuelan Declaration of Independence quite deliberately echoed the language of Thomas Jefferson's declaration on the 5th of July rather than the 4th, 1811, the citizens and the government of the United States were very slow to acknowledge any kind of fundamental commonality. Instead, US historians have fostered a vision of the revolutionary origins of the United States as a unique set of events that created an exceptional nation, founded on a set of republican ideals and principles rather than on a common heritage, ethnicity, or ruling class. Thus, as Abraham Lincoln suggested, the United States had been conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Lincoln ended his Gettysburg Address by suggesting that should the United States fall, government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall perish from the earth. The American Civil War was not, in Lincoln's memorable speech, about the success of a single republic amongst many, but rather concerned the fate of an incomparable and irreplaceable republic. I hope that we can discuss some of the similarities and the differences between different American revolutions, but I wanted to start out by exploring why the popular and political culture of the United States persists in regarding the first revolution in the Americas as a unique event, inherently and essentially different from any other subsequent revolution in the New World.
Simon, thank you very much. Much to think about there as well. And finally, Anthony Clark.
Yes, well, my comments are going to focus on Spanish America subject, Spanish American independence subject, on which I've recently been working. But I hope to pick up on some of these comparisons and contrasts. In fact, I want to start with a comparison between the American Revolution, about which Simon has just been talking, and the revolutions of Spanish America. One obvious difference to any historian who's looked at the subject is that the American Revolution, as John alluded to, this was a drawn-out crisis which can be traced back to the Stamp Act riots of 1765, and when political confrontation revived in 1773 to 6, it led to an organised opposition and political mobilisation. The colonial assemblies come together, transforming themselves into a confederation to oppose Great Britain. They proclaimed their independence of Britain, and they went to war with a metropolitan power that was overwhelmingly powerful. The Spanish-American revolutions, by contrast, take place in very different circumstances. They take place in circumstances not of confrontation with the metropolitan power, but in circumstances of crisis at the very centre of the empire. Napoleon invaded Spain in 1808, and the French occupied Spain, and Napoleon usurped its throne, placing his brother Joseph on that throne. So, in the Spanish-American case, instead of there being a slow build-up of opposition to the metropolitan government, leading to a rebellion against it, the Spanish-American colonies are suddenly and unexpectedly thrust into an unprecedented political crisis, where the collapse of the centre forced them to reconsider their relationship to Spain. Can we say then that without the political crisis in Europe, that there would have been no independence movements in Spanish America in 1810 for us to celebrate in 2010? Perhaps, like Cuba, countries like Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, etc., would have waited another century, perhaps longer, before breaking away with Spain. There is a reasonable case for this. There was opposition to Spain in its American possessions for reasons not dissimilar, as John has pointed out, to those which provoked North American opposition to Britain. During the latter half of the 18th century, the Spanish crown was seeking to exert more control over its American resources and subjects in order to reinvigorate the power of the Spanish monarchy and allow it to hold its own amongst the European powers. The Bourbon kings introduced a series of reforms that were aimed at improving defence and government, enlarging its fiscal income, and imposing the Spanish monopoly on American trade more effectively. In the early 1780s, when Great Britain and its North American colonies were bringing their conflict to a close, two large-scale rebellions break out in Spanish America. Rebellions that break out in response to the Bourbon reforms recently introduced into their territory. One was the Comparando rebellion, as it's known, which takes place in central New Granada, otherwise known today as Colombia. The other, which takes place in 1782, was the rebellion of known as the Rebellion of Tupac Amaru, a series of indigenous rebellions of which Tupac Amaru was the outstanding leader, that take place in the area of what's now southern Peru and Bolivia. These were very large and threatening rebellions. They were directed against Bourbon policies, and they directly threatened American colonial governments. The interesting thing about them, however, is that they do not turn into equivalents of the contemporaneous North American revolutions. The Comuneros